Hi, wrestling fans, and welcome to another edition. I'm John Arezzi.
Weighing 225 pounds, John Anthony.
Looks like the road's getting a little hot now. Then he's scooped up by the tree.
How you doing, wrestling fans, and welcome back to Pro Wrestling Spotlight Rewind, the only wrestling podcast that brings you back to the early days of pro wrestling talk, covering the history of our groundbreaking radio show, which aired from 1989 to 1995. Each week, this program reviews a different show from that era, giving you a look back at all the breaking news stories with the guests that made the news in what was the beginning of an era where talking about the inside of the wrestling business eventually became part of the business. On this episode, we're going to review Show 7 of the Pro Wrestling Spotlight, which originally aired on 1440 WNYG in Babylon, New York on May 21st, 1989. And special guest on this program included the six-time NWA World Champion and all-time legend, Lou Thesz. But first, I want to tell you about our Patreon account, and it's going to be more important than ever before as you listen to this edition of Pro Wrestling Spotlight Rewind. $5 a month will get you in that door and give you the entire archives of the Pro Wrestling Spotlight podcast and the original broadcast of the radio show. We have several tiers for you to choose from. There are over 500 audio posts at this point, historic content, close to 150 video posts, 250 plus vintage photographs, 8mm films, and much more. We have a great all-access tier. It's $15 a month. It gives you access to all the archives. So go to patreon.com/John Arezzi. And if you want to actually get a chance to appear on this show, one of the higher tiers will give you the details on how that can happen as well. So once again, go to our Patreon account. It's going to be more important than ever. So go to patreon.com/John Arezzi for more information. And without any further ado, let's bring our co-host, producer, creative director, Marsh, coming to you direct from that wonderful, beautiful place in New Mexico, Albuquerque. Marsh, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really good. We're getting into balloon season out here, apparently.
Balloon season?
Yeah, I'm learning as I go.
What is balloon season?
I guess one of the biggest things they do in Albuquerque nationwide is the Hot Air Balloon Festival.
Oh, okay.
So apparently it's going to be a huge deal, and we kind of live up a little bit. So my wife says that on her drive to work, she can see a bunch of balloons in the distance as people are getting ready. So hopefully we won't have to spend a ton of money to see some of this stuff.
No, they're actually very visually stunning in a lot of ways. Here in Franklin, Tennessee, there is always, and it's typically always in like the fall part of the year, that you see these hot air balloons. Sometimes there's 3 or 4 of them at a shot. Sometimes there's 1 or 2, but they are pretty visually stunning. I would never get in one because I don't like heights. Enjoy that. You're experiencing a lot of wonderful things out there in that new homestead of yours.
Yeah, it's been cool. I mean, we're coming up on the last next weekend. It's going to be, I mean, I guess as we record it, it's this weekend coming up. The end of the isotope season should be wrapping up. So I'm going to go one more game before that's over. And then
Are they in the hunt playoff wise, or are they finished?
I don't know because I gotta look because they've been winning a lot this year, especially the second half.
So you just go to the games, but you don't know if they're in the hunt for a playoff spot.
No idea. I go to the games and I like the game that I go to, and then I forget about it until
And
the
that's
next game
it.
comes up.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I hope they're in the playoffs, so then it'll extend your season a little bit further.
I think it'd be awesome to do some playoff stuff. How do you tell about AAA? Because it's not like
They're
the World
They're
Series.
standings, and they have a AAA World Series.
Really? All right.
Yeah,
There you go.
yeah.
Yeah, if I looked up standings, there it was.
Hey, let me ask you a
All right.
question. How many
Yeah.
baseball podcasts do you do right now?
3.
Well, then maybe you should know a little bit more about AAA playoffs. Maybe you should talk to JP. I'm sure he'll give you a
Yeah.
nice earful about that. Give you a little
He should
history.
look. He should know. How do I?
Yeah.
I think we're in the hunt because when I look at standings, there's Albuquerque.
Well, what place are they in?
I can't tell. 3rd, I think.
Uh huh.
I think there's not like a number next to it.
Okay. You just have a GB, like a games behind it all.
Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah, GB.
How many games?
They're
behind?
8.5.
Well, that's not good.
Sounds good because the one below them are 9, and below that's 15.
Yeah, but if there are 8 games behind the leader, and there's only a week of games left, there's no way they're making the playoffs, unless there's
I guess
wild cards and stuff like that.
I don't know.
Like my New York
Yeah.
Mets are definitely in the hunt. You know, they're leading the Braves for the final wild card. They're only a game behind the San Diego Padres now for the first wild card spot. So I have a feeling we're going to have some postseason baseball here for all our Mets fans.
I think it's going to be cool. I'm really excited about that because, I mean, the fact that the Diamondbacks, the Padres, and the Mets are all in the hunt for this wild card positioning and stuff.
Yeah.
Those are the 3 teams that I'm closest to in every way. So it's like massively exciting. And
Yeah,
also,
4 teams,
everyone I know is
3
obsessed with one of them.
spots. Yeah. Well, hey, listen, it's going to be an exciting last couple of weeks. And, of course, we cover that on Terry Collins' show and, the Wally Backman extravaganza that I'm not on air on. But it's a very entertaining show nonetheless, isn't it?
It's one of the more wild ones we make off screen.
Yeah, but great guests, right?
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So, and we made quite a bit of news this week on Terry's show with the Noah Syndergaard interview and his statements about wanting to come back to New York. And just search it because it went not even viral. It went national.
Yeah.
From Sports Illustrated to Los Angeles Times. Everyone picked up on it. And it gave us more visibility for the Terry Collins show than we've ever had it turned out to be a major baseball story. So anyway, we're kind of excited. But anyway, let's talk about, before we get into everything, and we have been gone now, I guess, for what, 3-4 weeks, maybe 4 weeks?
Been longer than we would have liked. Yep.
Yep. And some of it was vacation, which we're going to talk about, the CAC and that reunion you went to, and I'm sure you got some great stories. And but the biggest thing is, like, we were so excited when we finished the cycle of Pro Wrestling Spotlight, and then we decided to continue on with a Pro Wrestling Spotlight Rewind because we had a partner that we were very excited about being involved with, that can do marketing and sell advertising and really give us a boost. But there've been some turns of events, and you learn about situations as you get into them. And even though we did the research and everything sounds good on surface, and then in application, sometimes things don't work out. So we are now solo again. We're solo again. But we still have a situation where our, what they call, explain to everybody what an RSS feed is, Marsh.
I mean, more or less, just to simplify it, it's the URL where all of your archives live, right? It's not exactly a website you go to, but it's more or less where all of your podcast history is stored on one little chain. So without that, we don't have our entire archive to transfer over, bring back, or to add on top of. So we need to have that to have the history of everything kind of remain in one place. And
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, all of our
Yeah,
listeners.
because right now it's housed with the people that we were associated with, and I'm attempting obviously to get that back in my possession because I transferred it over to them so they could do what they do on the marketing side, and
Mhm.
so for it's still up there. That RSS feed is not going away, so the shows are still up there. I just want to get control of them again, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think that's
I
going to
mean,
be a problem. I think it's just a matter of when we can finally get this all settled. But for the immediate future, this show is going to be a Patreon only show every week. We're going to get back to a weekly recording. And then once that situation is resolved, they'll all go up for the general public. But for now, it's all patrons.
I mean, I guess we'll talk about it if I need to cut this or not. But is the YouTube going to remain
Oh yeah, YouTube is all set.
public?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so that could be yeah, we still have full control over a YouTube channel. Yeah.
Yep.
So
So I think
it'll
that
be
for,
patrons and YouTube. Patrons get
yeah,
it first, YouTubers get it second.
yeah,
And then
cool.
hopefully the podcast streaming world will get it as well.
Yeah.
So I'm just fed up with people.
Yeah, it's just so it was so ridiculous that it's almost it was laughable at some points. It was like it was awful. Everything was going on with all that. But at the end of the day, like I couldn't help but laugh because it's like, of course, something crazy has to happen here.
Yeah.
Of course, it has to be a wild thing. It can't just be a normal
No.
business relationship.
Yeah. That's my history in the wrestling business. It's like, Terry Collins show, oh, that is so great. And, JP show. And it's like, but anytime it's something to do with pro wrestling with me, there's always something that's wacky.
Yep.
But at least we're continuing.
Yeah. No,
We're
I'm
back.
excited to get back into it. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
crazy. It's cool. But yeah, we're back.
Yeah. Yeah. Luthez has been waiting.
Yeah.
So, vacation, even though this is way, after you got back from your vacation, and uh, I understand you had some adventures out in Vegas at the Cauliflower Alley reunion, and you want to share some stuff with us about that. I think it was an amazing trip for you, from what I understand.
It was really cool. It was really neat. I got to spend a lot of time with Kurt Henning's son, Hank, his youngest. He
Hmm.
was there walking around, just kind of, you know, he just wanted to get to know people, and he kind of wanted to get a couple little stories out about his dad to see, here's people who knew him on the road. Like, could he get a few little road stories? And he was able to do that, and I thought that was really cool. But I spent a good amount of time with him, some Vegas friends that I have. The last night I was drinking with Haku for a couple of hours. Like,
Oh,
is
did you stay
insane.
away from his mouth? Because he's been
There
known
was
to bite people's noses off in bars.
I kept like a chair between us, like a
Good.
little just biting distance. But he was awesome. He was really cool. I ran into Sabu and I told you about that because that couldn't have been more funny to me. Just this interaction I had with him just came straight out of the 90s to me.
Do you want to talk about that, or you going to get into that?
I probably not because it's current. I don't want to say anything negative about a guy. He was really nice to me. He had a beer with me, but yeah, he was on the hunt for stuff that I was not on the hunt for, and so I just called it.
Oh, he was looking for one
Uh,
of those hacksaw Jim Duggan LJN figures.
yeah, yeah, definitely one of those classics. But I
And
gotta
and
meet.
and was the hacksaw Jim Duggan action figure sitting with Iron Sheik by any chance while you guys were discussing what he was looking
Yeah,
for?
he has like a little toy set of the two of them, and he's just like,
He's like, mm-mm.
Uh, but it was cool. It was exciting because the unfortunate bit is because we've talked about it on the air. I figure I have to at least address it. Sunny Blaze did not make it to the CAC.
Right.
He had things he needed to take care of at home that he was not able to actually make the trip, which was really unfortunate because he bought the tickets, he's had the hotel, he had it all set, but
Yeah.
a thing came up that he was not going to be able to travel for that. And so I didn't get to see him. I made the error of not reaching out to the Power Twins as soon as I got there. They were free the first 2 days I was there, but not the days after. And I kind of talked to them on the second day, and they're kind of like, well, now it's a bit late. And I was like, this is my bad. But I got to see
Maybe that was a blessing in disguise.
Maybe in some ways, because it freed me up to like wander around and just take advantage of any moment that's happening. And I ended up spending some time talking to Greg Oliver, catching up with him. And that was really cool. When I saw Bill Alfonso over there, he was doing stuff. He signed a little plush for me.
Oh, look at
He made a
that.
little plush of himself.
That's a nice one,
yeah.
actually.
Yeah, but I also got him to sign my jersey. I have a ref shirt that's signed by Tommy Young, Charles Robinson, Billy Silverman. And this trip, I was able to add Bill Alfonso and James Beard to it. There's just some legendary refs on it. And so, yeah, Bill was awesome. RVD was awesome. But probably outside of those couple of things that just were really standout, the other thing that happened that was really bizarre that I thought, it was so weird. I was texting people that night, just going like, you won't believe what the hell just happened. I'm downstairs in the lobby. There's the day one, you know how they do all those intro things where it's all like, hey, you go in there and they close the main hall a little early and they do a pool party, get together with drinks and stuff. Well, in between those two things, I'm downstairs. I'm wearing a Project Rock shirt because I wear a lot of Project Rock shirts. And I'm talking to a guy, and off the elevator comes Ata Johnson.
And
she walks over to me and asks me about the pool party and where is it? Well, she already passed it, right? It was on the 5th floor. We're on the ground floor. And so I tell her, I was like, oh, it's, I can take you up to the pool, no problem. And like, we can go up there, right? And then she starts talking about my shirt. She's like, oh my God, that shirt's so nice. I was like, yeah, I'm a big fan of your son's stuff. Like, and it's comfortable. I was like, look, I'm even wearing his shoes and socks, like the whole thing. And then she kept going like, oh, it feels so nice. And, oh, it's such a nice design. She goes, can I see the back of it? And so I show her the back. She goes, where did you get it? Where did you get it? How much was it? Like, just grilling me on it. And I was telling her like Ross, and it was like $10. And at a certain point, I just go, did you want my shirt? Like, are you asking for my shirt? And she was like, no, but like, I really want one. Do you think I can get one? And I was like, can't your son send you one? And she was like, not exactly. And so
he's always called his mother a Rudy Poo candy ass. Oh, maybe he didn't want to give her one.
Maybe. She said the way that his contract is with him, he doesn't see all the designs. He doesn't approve all of them necessarily. There's a relationship, but he doesn't have domain over it, right? So I was like, all right, cool. And I was like, well, I'll tell you what, I'll take you up to the pool. I'll change into my trunks. I'll bring you my shirt. And so I'll send you the picture right here. Because then I told her, I was like, here's the deal. And I was like, we'll call it even as long as you let me get a picture of you with the shirt, so that way I can explain to my wife why I'm missing a
why
shirt.
you're missing a shirt, and you were hanging out with Ada, and there was some hanky-panky that could have gone on.
Absolutely.
She wanted to sing you a song on the ukulele.
Well, she did then. So then we're up there at the pool, and she starts playing ukulele. I tell her my wife spent time in Hawaii, has a ukulele, doesn't know how to play it, and so she was like, here, record this, I'll show her. And she did a couple little chords, and she goes, with these 4 chords, it's all you need to know. Sent her a little 15-second video of her getting private lessons. But it was just crazy, to literally end up giving the Rock's mom the shirt off my back.
Right.
It was just weird.
That's a lifelong memory, man.
Yeah. And then she hung out with me for a couple hours up at the pool, teaching us the dance and stuff, and playing the uke, and it was really wild. It was insane. Yeah, and then the whole weekend when I saw her, she's like waving.
She had a big presence there.
Yeah. Yeah, she did. And then even at the ceremonies, or is it, the banquet is not really a ceremony, right? But
Mhm.
kind of is. They had her come up and play song. She played song over at the karaoke with the ukulele. Like, she was very active there, very walking around. Oh, and that was the other thing that was funny is while I'm giving her my shirt, she goes, "Can I take a picture of you and me in my phone so I could show my son?" And I was like, "Okay, that's fine." So I'm just keeping an eye out on his socials, hoping that eventually she's walking around in that shirt somewhere. Because she's
That
like, "I
would
want
be
to
great.
surprise him when I get home with it. I want to be wearing it when I walk in. I want to surprise him." I'm like, "Okay, I'm sure it'll shock him." But
Wow. So that was kind of the highlight for you at the CAC was, and that is such a cool story. But I'm sure you had, I'm sure you ran into a lot of other people there and got to see the Dudleys and Sting and so many. It was loaded this year.
it was.
So many people.
I met Kurt Angle, and I had him. I went to a toy store
Oh,
nearby and found a vintage milk
milk truck.
truck, delivery truck, and I had him sign it. And at first, they were telling people he's not signing anything personal. That everyone was getting the same signature. When I walked up, I was like, "Oh, I was just hoping I can get him to sign this milk truck." And they're like, "Look, he's really not." And then they're like, they looked at it for a second, and they're like,
Yeah,
"That is pretty
that's
cool."
unique. That's unique.
And so then they asked Kurt if he'd sign it, and he was like, "Yeah, no problem."
He liked it.
And then he wrote Milkomania on the top, as you just saw. I couldn't believe it. It's like I asked him to
Milkomania.
do that. Yeah. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
That's
Oh, and
good,
I
man.
thanked Kurt for you in a way. I thanked him for all of his work he does with Tunnel to Towers, and I thought that
Oh,
was
no
really cool that he
kidding.
does all that. And
Yeah,
he kind of like paused. He's like, "Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it." He goes, "I love working with them." It's
yeah,
like it's a good thing. So yeah,
yeah. We have a couple of things we can't really talk publicly about, but there's going to be two Tunnel to Towers new PSAs with two major wrestling personalities, which we'll get into. I was fortunate to be able to get that done, so those will be shot in the fall. But we're excited for that. But yeah, that's a wonderful foundation. And Kurt, that was a great PSA that he did
yeah,
with them.
yeah, absolutely. And then, if I remember correctly, when did Luthez pass away?
Ooh,
Oh wait,
he died.
2002.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Because I'm sure
yeah.
he wasn't at CAC.
No, he wasn't there. But Kurt had told a story about when he first met Luthez and about how they like caught eyes, and
Of course.
they both had like this moment of like, "Oh, I've been waiting for this." And so I got asked him after his speech, after he talked about it, if they became close after they'd met. And he's like, "Yeah, we were pretty close up until he died." I was like, "That was really cool." But just kind of like leads into where the show is going today. Uh, but yeah, CAC was a really good time, really cool. How many opportunities you're gonna have to give the Rock's mom the clothes off your back?
Not a lot.
So, but yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to be back on stuff.
Yeah, we're back in the saddle, even though it's been a tumultuous few weeks. I have to laugh
It
about
has.
everything now. I can't get pissed. Like I won't explode. I won't yell. I won't do any of that. I just look at it and I shrug my shoulders and I laugh. I have to laugh.
Yeah,
Where John Arezzi in the 90s and 80s would be like, "Oh, these effing ba 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 ba." It's like, you know what? I believe in karma more than anything else. So I'm good. you know,
yeah.
Keeps my blood pressure down.
No reason to get all
Well,
hot and bothered.
at this
Just
at this age, you got to keep that blood pressure down because you never know.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So overall, it was a great trip, and we're back in the saddle. Let's get this wonderful look back started.
Yeah, we had a good time, but it's good to be back in it. This one, let's just start with a simple open. because you kind of lay it out. I like the way you lay out your opens before you go to that ad break right away.
I've been a professional for many years, Marsh.
Comes across right here.
Hello there, wrestling fans. Former pro wrestler John Anthony here. Welcome to another edition of the Pro Wrestling Spotlight. Heard each and every week right here on 1440 WNYG in Babylon, New York. We have a very exciting show today. First of all, we're going to have a live interview upcoming with one in business. I'm referring to six-time NWA World Heavyweight Champion Lou Thesz. He'll be joining us in about 10 minutes. Lou will be speaking about his career and also about the recent developments in the NWA. And I'm referring to Terry Funk attacking Ric Flair recently, and also the state of the NWA with the recent acquisition of the organization by Ted Turner. Yesterday, I attended a street festival in Queens, New York. Bruno Sammartino, the living legend of wrestling, was there. We will have a feature on that street festival with Bruno Sammartino answering questions from many of the people in attendance. There were several thousand there. We'll be speaking to Don Liable. Also talking about the show in Brooklyn last night. If I sound a little injured, which I am, I have a pretty bruised head right now after getting slammed into a ring post. I didn't manage the Power Twins last night, and as you can tell, they're not here in the studio today. I did manage Broadway Sunny Blaze. Glenn, the G-Man, is here also, and he was with the Power Twins yesterday. What we'd like to do, we're going to get all this underway right after these commercial messages, so we'll be back with the Pro Wrestling Spotlight right after this.
Good, nice open. Very professionally done.
The as a pro would, the Bruno Street Fair thing, was that something you just happened to go to, or were you like sent to go do an interview? Like, how did that?
I just wanted to go. I had found out about it. Bill Apter was there, and Bruno, of course, and Sonny was there. So it was kind of a cool thing. And on this episode, as people will notice as we get through it, the last half hour of the show was not recorded. I think it was because I had a 90-minute cassette or something. So for patrons, try to dig up that original audio and digitize that and get that up for everybody to have, since it's really not covered on this show.
Yeah, it wasn't. But I was curious how the whole thing kind of came about. So do you even remember, like, with, because you said he was answering questions, were you just walking around with him, or was it a little more formal than that?
It was actually, it was kind of ironic. It was like in front of the Wendy's that used to be the Sunnyside Garden Arena. It was that same location. And that's where this festival was, on that same street. I believe it was Queens Boulevard. And I can't really recall, what it was all about. It was just a street fair. Bruno was there, as a personality, and he was answering questions. There was a little microphone, little podium set up where he was able to get some, and there was a ring for some wrestling demonstrations, because that was the site of Sunnyside Gardens.
Oh, huh. Was that, man, I don't know where that is geographically. How close is that to Little Italy?
Oh, it's across the bridge. It's like a Queens.
Okay.
You got to go over.
Gotcha.
You have to go over the 59th Street Bridge to get into that east side of Manhattan, and Little Italy's kind of on the west side. No, they're on whatever. It's not close.
Yeah, no, it's the southern part of the island.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, not at all. Because I was just wondering. I just happened to know, just from when I was out there. I remember walking through Little Italy, and there was a little museum thing, and there were pictures of Bruno there, and that he used to go along this little street fair that was the Little Italy
the San Gennaro feast. That's the big one. That's going on actually right now in New York. They do it every year. It's the huge festival down on Mott Street in Mulberry.
Yeah, I guess he used to go to that. So I was just clarifying for my own sense. So, but that's cool. And then you got hurt. This is the night that you managed Power Twins and Broadway.
Yeah. And Broadway was against Taz, who was known as Kid Crush back then. And, I gave him a shot as part of the deal. And then he kind of was outside the ring and he slammed my head into the ring post and I hit my head and I also hit my wrist really hard. So I don't know if I get into that with Sonny later on, but yeah, I was, I was trying to make it look too good.
Yeah. This was the last time you managed for all of them, right?
Oh yeah.
Was it deliberate because after this
there was no future in it. And there's no money in it.
Was it a direct cause and response based off of like the injury that you got, or was it just as things kind of kept going on, you're just kind of like, I don't know.
No, I'm like, if you go to a show and you don't get paid, why do you do it? And those guys, it's I just got like, there's nothing in this. This is crazy.
Yeah. So what I'm gathering, I believe that the injury helped because you were probably like, not only did I not get paid, but now I'm hurting.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to have to pay money to at least get medicine.
Right. And I wasn't exactly nimble on my feet back then.
Yeah.
More nimble now than I was 35 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. You've been looking good. I saw you post about it the other day.
Losing that weight, brother.
Yeah, we got to get back into those singlets if we're going to tag team at the next CAC.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do it. We should really have a grudge match against the Power Twins, you and I.
Yeah. I think we could
try to get Broadway in there. Maybe it could be a 3-on-2 handicap match with the Twins, me, you, and Broadway. And we'll bring Don Leibel in to referee that.
He'd be the manager. Bring Bug back.
He can be the Bug. Yeah.
Bring the Bug out of retirement.
Yeah. I think we should pitch that to Brian Blair right now for 2025 CAC.
Yeah. I don't see why we wouldn't.
I don't see why thousands of more people won't show up for it.
Yeah. I have to do a bus trip, dude. Let's
do a bus trip.
So this is also the episode where you apologize to all of the hearing impaired.
I had to. Yeah. Do you have a clip of that, or is no clip of that?
I did not pull it because it was just you saying you were sorry about it.
Because I was forced to do that because they had gotten WNYG had gotten complaints from the Society for the Visually Impaired or whatever it was, and it was a big to do with the lawyer at WNYG and the program director, and I had to read a disclaimer. I had to apologize and read a disclaimer, and the opinions expressed by our guests are not necessarily the viewpoint of the Pro Wrestling Spotlight as producers or the station management at WNYG. That had to be read legally because of what they did the week before.
So they gave you a script and said, you have to read this?
It wasn't a script. I had to write it, but they said you need to apologize and you need to hold harmless, this station for what these guys said.
All right. If you say we got to hear it, I'll play it right now.
Got to.
Here it is. What you were forced to do by the station because of Power Twins. And you bring up that they're not there today. Do you remember if that was a deliberate, intentional? They're not allowed to come in?
They weren't allowed. And to be honest with you, it was kind of my way of maybe this is going to prevent them from coming in every single week and disrupting the show. It was a good excuse.
Well, I got comfortable enough later, but here it is. Here's your apology.
With the Pro Wrestling Spotlight. Before we even get into the program today, on behalf of the Pro Wrestling Spotlight and WNYG, I want to apologize to all the visually impaired people for comments made on this program last week by the Power Twins. If the Power Twins offended anyone, and since they were guests on my program, I want to take the time out to apologize to anyone we might have offended out there. And also, guests appearing on the Pro Wrestling Spotlight will occasionally make comments that might offend some people out there. So these opinions expressed by guests of this program do not necessarily reflect the views of myself or the management of WNYG. I just wanted to clear that up before we even got going with the program today. The Power Twins are not here today, and I don't know how you guys feel about that out there, but they are wrestling the Wild Samoans tonight in New Haven, Connecticut. They wrestled last night in Brooklyn. We'll be getting to that later on in the program.
Sometimes guests are going to say things that are offensive.
Yes. And that continues on for the life of the show.
Do you remember having to, I know there was a certain point where you started like putting that in the intro and outro of the show or the radio station did.
Yeah, that was WEVD actually. And it could be WGBB as well, because I started covering things that warranted that disclaimer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Was there, do you remember having to ask if they could come back in or not? Or you guys just waited out a little bit and then brought them back?
I think it was not something where I might have had a conversation with them now that I'm thinking about it, about how they offended people, and they're kind of in hot water over here right now.
All right. Well, the show goes on and you bring on Lou Thez. We talked about this a little bit before we started recording. Just, was this your first time interviewing Lou or even talking to him?
Yes, very first time. And I believe Donnie Leibel had set it up, got me his number. And ironically, Donnie is on this episode too. But I just couldn't, at that time, it was just kind of patching people in to talk to a guest was still something that our geniuses at WNYG didn't know how to do.
Well, his interview came across just fine, though. There wasn't like a bunch of...
Yeah, but I wanted Donnie on it because Donnie was so close to him.
Gotcha. So trying to get a third person would have been difficult.
Yeah.
Well, then cool. So if this was the first time you talked to him, did you stay in touch with him? Did you get to know him at all? Like, did you use him for your conventions and stuff, right?
Oh, he was at the 91 convention.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was one of those featured people at the 1991 Weekend of Champions, because it was kind of, I wanted to bring in all these champions like Rogers and Thez and, Bruno and Flair, Billy Graham. So he was part of that. And I do remember, and he does come on the show in future episodes, but I do remember one thing, because I was getting items for auction, and Lou wanted to give me a pair of his socks to auction off. And I kind of said, no, I don't want to really. So I got a pair of trunks. There was a few things, but, socks, I don't think that was something that I would have gotten big bids for, or maybe so, but I didn't want to find out.
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of framed socks in general.
John, I wore these socks in 1947 to 1954. Didn't wash them once. They actually stand up by themselves. It would be a great auction item.
Yeah, they're better than boots.
Better than boots.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, let's listen to a little bit of it. I was kind of enthralled. Like I mentioned to you before we started recording, the reverence that even people still talked about Lou now, especially at the CAC, people were bringing him up. Like I said, Kurt brought him up in his speech, but there's just something about the name Lou Thez that just like commands a reverence.
Yeah. Class guy, legitimate shooter, one of the most historic wrestlers in the history of pro wrestling. Upper level, upper tier, just an amazing career, and someone who was respected around the world for his entire career.
All right. I broke this up into two different clips because of the kind of stuff he's talking about, but I felt like enthralled by just listening to him. So I think people will enjoy it.
What we're going to do right now, we understand our first guest star is on the line, and we're going to take that call. For everyone out there who is not familiar with this gentleman, he's a classic indeed. We're on the air with Mr. Lou Thez. Lou, thank you for appearing on the program.
Thank you very much, John. I'm very pleased that you called me. Happy to work with you.
Well, for those out there listening to the Pro Wrestling Spotlight, if you're not familiar with this gentleman, and I can't see anyone out there who is not familiar with the World Heavyweight Championship for a period of 18 years.
Yes, a little excessive, 18 years. And, of course, we were doing what we enjoy doing, John, and if you really enjoy what you're doing, why you're a very, very fortunate person, and that's what wrestling was to me. It never was work, and working out 7 days a week was a pleasure, And if you get hooked on something and really like it, why you pay attention, you try to improve,
Of course. How did you get started in the business? I understand your father was a great wrestler in his own right.
Well, my father was a wrestler in Europe, and cross-roughing the two back and forth served me very well through the years.
What year did you break in?
1936.
Uh-huh. I understand at the age of 18 years old, you met Ed Strangler Lewis. Now, did he have a big influence on your career?
He's a great, great wrestler. He's probably the best wrestler the world has ever known, because talking with all the people that, have had a pretty good track record and have worked out with him and so forth, they pretty well agree that he was the daddy of them all. And I did, because, of course, I loved the guy, and he was wonderful to me, and he was like a father, brother, and that's kind of a relationship,
Right.
And anyway, it was a good trip with Ed, and he managed my public relations later in my career, my wrestling career, when I was a champion, and we enjoyed each other very much, and it was a great life. I'd like to do it all over again.
Oh, sure. One thing that everyone always mentions to me and people here affiliated with the program about yourself, Lou, is that you look like you could get into the ring today.
Well, I work out 5 or 6 days a week. I have a wrestling academy, a wrestling school here in Virginia called the Virginia Wrestling Academy. And I have my boys and the shop talkers rolling around, meaning wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And I do that 4 or 5 times a week, and work out with the weights 5 days, 6 days a week. And it keeps one in condition. And I turned 73 recently on my 73rd birthday.
You're 73 years old.
I'm sorry.
You're 73 years old?
Yes.
You look, you don't look a day over 50.
Uh-huh. I'm going to buy you dinner.
Sure.
But then, nevertheless, I had a refita match in Tokyo, Japan on my 73rd birthday. And it was really a lot of fun.
And must have
I'll
been.
talk to you a little bit about that. They had
Sure.
some Russians over there that were super wrestlers, the Olympic champions, and they were wrestling the Japanese and also some of the Americans. And I refereed some of that and worked out with them for 4 or 5 days prior to the match, and really enjoyed the company. And it's a back to wrestling movement, John, and I was very pleased to be a part of it.
Well, that's one thing I wanted to get into with you was wrestling today is so much different than what it was years ago when you were in your prime. I noticed the NWA trying to get back into that a little bit more. The NWA is obviously the longest organization in the history of wrestling.
Well, there's a man by the name of Jim Hurt. He's from St. Louis, and he's working with Mr. Turner on this wrestling promotion thing. And I've known Jim for a number of years. And I think he's doing an incredible job, a very good job, as a matter of fact. And he has some really fine wrestlers. Like, of course, the match recently in May 7th in Nashville, Tennessee, between Ric Flair and Steamboat.
One of the all-time classic
One of the
matches.
Classics, of all time. And they'd made executed such beautiful moves. And I'm talking about real wrestling. And it really made me feel good, and I think it's back to wrestling movement is beginning to pay off, and I've been harping on that for several years, and I think it's coming about. Some of the showbiz type thing and the hype and the music, I have no quarrel with that, John, but after the bell rings, we need to do some wrestling,
Exactly.
And just to run a soap opera type operation is really not where it is, and wrestling has lost a lot of credibility because of that. And I think we're going to get it back because in Japan, for instance, there's a group called UWF,
I've heard about
Wrestling, and you can only lose a match or a fall by submission. You've got to give up. And also the New Japan group that Noki was former champion of. They brought the Russians over, and I refereed some of those, and they do some real wrestling, and I'm so pleased to be a part of it again, I say, and I think our back to wrestling movement is beginning to move.
He was a proponent till the day he died of wrestling, not sports entertainment.
I always think it's cool when we hear some of these guys, and because I saw their clip went by where, you never know if people are quoting something they've heard or where it came from, right? But there was Scott D'Amore was interviewed and said that there was a quote where basically like I believe they were saying it was Lou Thez talking about Harley Race and said that he was cartoonish and fake, and he was too much of a showman and not much of a wrestler. And it's kind of like, to hear that about Harley Race is so crazy. But again, when I heard that, it's just as a quote, I was like, I'm wondering if he was talking about the King Harley when he was in WWF, because I could see that being
definitely that's what he had to be referring to, because I know he had a respect for Harley Race the wrestler.
Yeah.
But when Race got into the WWF and, people do stuff for money, and then when he became the King over there, it was not something that I guess Lou Thez took seriously.
Yeah. And so for me, I just like that when I hear these eras talk about what's wrong with it, they're always talking about credibility. They want credibility back.
Yes.
They don't want the sports entertainment, like, where we look at how the business went, right? Couldn't be more pageant orientated now. Like, there's just no way to make it a bigger show.
No, it's a touring act now.
Yeah.
It's not wrestling, like it used to be, but now it's just kind of these huge events, and WWE and TKO, I mean, they are just rocking it, and that's what it's become.
And interestingly enough, I think that I could understand why, because the business was the way that it was, that they thought the lack of credibility would destroy the entire business. Where really the stripping down of the credibility opened up the business in a whole other way that I don't think anyone could have seen or predicted, except maybe for the maniac who did it. But but it's just interesting. I love it. I love hearing him talk about, we want credibility back.
He was a purist. He was a purist, more than perhaps anybody that I ever spoke to on this program or had any conversations with about wrestling. He was a purist.
Yeah. We got one more Thez clip.
Okay.
We'll play this one.
I don't want to be a wise guy, but if you're steeped in wrestling, and I devoted my life to it, if you see a fellow make 2 or 3 moves, you know immediately if he's a wrestler or he isn't.
And guys like Steiner, Rotundo, that have great colligion backgrounds. Steve Williams is another.
That makes sense. Mm-hmm. And these Russian wrestlers in Japan that I saw in Japan, they were super. Their moves are nearly exclusively Greco-Roman from the waist up, but beautifully executed things. And I mean, they're really sophisticated wrestlers.
Right.
And the people went absolutely wild over these people.
Would you say Ric Flair is the best wrestler today?
He's one of the best. Mm-hmm. I think at this point, on a given day, Rick can beat anyone. But as I say, like a fellow like Steamboat is really a very sophisticated. He's a very good wrestler, and his reflex is so good, so instant that he can nail anyone at any time. And that's what makes it so interesting, because when you get 2 people like that and they're butting heads, a lot of sparks fly and things happen.
Exactly. One thing that really upset me watching the Wrestle War was the actions of Terry Funk. Now, you were one of the judges on the panel judging. That's in case if the match went 60 minutes, you were going to decide the winner of this big championship event. Did Terry Funk give you any indication while you guys were sitting at a table that he was going to do something like that?
No, that's a good question. I talked to several people about that, and I was really disappointed in his conduct, because that's really out of line completely. Halfway back to the dressing room, I looked back and I saw Pat O'Connor right behind me, and I said, "Where's Terry?" He said, "He should be here." Well, he wasn't, and he stayed at ringside to want to do an interview, but that isn't what he stayed for. He was looking for confrontation.
Yeah, he was definitely had an ulterior motive.
Sure.
And just watching wrestling yesterday and the last couple of weeks since this event, he wants to be put back in that top 10, and I just hope he hasn't really hurt Ric Flair to the extent that it affects Ric Flair's wonderful career.
It shouldn't affect Ric Flair at all, but he was trying to pad his part and to get his foot in the door, and I think it was very poor conduct, particularly in the fact that he was one of the judges.
Exactly.
That is stupid.
Yep.
And I told him that. I said, you really lost credibility of any of the judging that we could do in the past or future, because I said, if a judge doesn't abide by the rules, what are we doing here?
Exactly right. I remember the Cajun Clash when they had the old timers and the former champions there at that match. Funk acted like he was a gentleman, but just once Flair recaptured that title, I guess he saw an opportunity to maybe challenge Rick, but I think he went about it the wrong way.
Well, greed is a strange thing, my friend.
Yes, it is.
And I guess you can't legislate laws against that. I don't know. But I was really disappointed in that part of it. I thought Rick did a masterful job. It was a very simple, very basic pin, but that's what happens because any wrestling coach can tell you, if you can beat a fellow in 10 seconds, you better get him because in 11 seconds he may get you.
Exactly.
But I thought it was a super, super match, and I was thrilled about it. I was sitting right next to Pat O'Connor. I said, Pat, these men have really done their homework. These guys are wrestlers. And he said, man, isn't that the truth?
Well, one thing that gave me the cold chills was after the match was over with, after Flair defeated Steamboat, they embraced, which rarely happens, and they just respected each other for the true champions they both were.
Well, they must. It's mutual respect because they're both top athletes. And on another given day, why Steamboat can get him, which he has.
Right.
So that's the way it goes.
Are you going to be actively involved in the NWA anytime in the future now?
Oh, yes. I'll stay with NWA. I'm very pleased with their performance and what they are doing with wrestling. However, I operate my wrestling academy here, you know?
Yeah, please tell us about that.
Well, I'm here in Norfolk, Virginia, and I do that. And I told Jim Hurd at the beginning of this operation, he called me and we discussed it. And I said, well, Jim, I have the school and I'm going to perpetuate that. And anything that you need me for, like for a special referee or whatever, or a judge or interviews or whatever, I'm available to you. I'm on call. But I need to operate my school because that's my first love and that's what I want to do.
Great. Really enjoyed that.
What I love about it too is you clearly wanted to go into this making a timeless interview. You know what I mean?
And maybe it was not planned that way, but it certainly came out that way. It seems very timeless to this day.
Yeah, for sure. Especially in the beginning where you just really want to lay out his career. Like,
yeah,
we talked about that before even going to CSC, that I feel like that some of these guys, someone needs to put a mic in front of them just to record their story. You know, like how many of these guys don't have books about them or don't have a podcast or anything. Like, there's a lot of great stories out there.
And it seems like we lose more and more of them every year.
Exactly. I ended up befriending a couple of people who were there specifically making podcasts. And I was like kind of nudging them towards certain people, being like, hey, I don't know if this person's ever really done an interview, but they've been in the business for 40 years. So it might be worth sitting down with them, you know, but yeah, just awesome. It was great to hear.
The whole interview is on our Patreon. Obviously, it was a great one, and it was the first of a few different appearances Lou made with us, and it was one of those ones that, unless you were kind of, had a sense of history, it may not mean a lot. But for people who listen to this show, who do have a sense of history, and that's the reason why they listen to this, it's a classic interview.
It is. I didn't even want to cut it. When I was doing it, a lot of times I'll make the one clip of the whole interview and then I'll go through and shave it. This one I was hoping that the whole interview could be saved because it was just so good. But
yeah,
it was
at least everyone has a chance to go on Patreon and hear the whole thing, and they'll enjoy it.
Absolutely. And then as we keep moving, the next real big thing that happened here is you get Don Liable doing his independent report, which was the pre-tape that you would do with him.
Yep.
And then you immediately followed that up with getting Donnie on the line. So I didn't keep the independent report because there was so much Donnie because he stayed for the rest of the show.
And the quality, because I guess when I recorded it, I always used the same cart. And after each time you record something on a cart, you're supposed to put it on this demagnetizer.
Yeah.
And unless if you don't, it sounds like it's pulsing, and there's and that's how Don's report sounded. So I probably didn't demagnetize the cart back then when I re-recorded Donnie's independent report. But I was happy to get Don on and talk to him. Like, I think it was the first time we were actually, I wanted people to know more about him because I was thinking in the back of my head, I think I want to do something with Donnie every week.
Yeah.
Which became the capsule down the road.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really been kind of neat to see that the reliable independent report turn into something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But and then I can't wait till we start using that obnoxious sound effect when he calls it for it.
The news ticker.
Yeah, so good. You're like, we're gonna really knock this one out of the park.
Yeah.
But here's a few minutes of Donnie coming on and explaining who he is.
Okay.
Live on the telephone from Utica. Utica, where are you, Don? Don. Hello, are you there?
Yes, John.
Okay, great. Where are you from originally, Don?
John, I'm a byproduct of the Big Apple, Brooklyn, New York. Had the pleasure for many years attending the monthly cards at Madison Square Garden to see Bruno Sammartino. Also, another favorite place was Sunnyside Gardens. I'm sure many of the listeners remember that in Long Island City.
Oh, yeah, there's a Wendy's there now.
Yeah, believe it or not, I heard Bobby Davis, Buddy Rogers' former manager, had something to do with that Wendy's going up there.
No kidding.
Yeah.
'Cause we were there. I was there yesterday with Bruno Sammartino, and they took some photos. Bill Apter, one of the other wrestling reporters, took some photos of Bruno with the managers of the Wendy's on the site that Bruno wrestled many times at.
You know, years ago, John, at Sunnyside Gardens, that's where at the Worldwide Wrestling Federation used to do their television tapings before they went down to Washington. And believe it or not, back in 1959, Pedro Morales' very first professional match was at Sunnyside Gardens.
Wasn't he like 16 years old?
Very young, very young. And then, of course, he went out to California, got quite popular there. I believe he won a title. I'm not sure, but I think it was the United States title. And then he came east and ended up winning the world crown from Ivan Koloff.
Yes, that was in 1971. Now, you've been around the business on and off for a long period of time. You're still a young man yourself, but you write for many of the magazines today. Your name is in all the magazines. You're one of the top reporters in the business. How did you get started in it?
Well, believe it or not, John, getting back to Sunnyside Gardens, I used to take off from school the day of the matches, and I'd stand outside the arena and help set up the ring. At the time, a wrestler by the name of Pinky Larson
Oh, I remember
used
him.
to take the ring around. And, of course, he'd let us stay in for the matches for free and take the wrestlers' jackets, and one thing led to another and got around the people. At the time, there was a close-knit, and I think this is true even today with wrestling. The fans there is a network, more so than in other sports, that there's a closeness. And I got to meet a lot of people. I used to go to the Edison Hotel and the Holland Hotel where the WWF used to have an office.
I think that's where I first met you, isn't it?
Right. And I also met a fellow by the name of Tom Burke,
Right.
who is one of the foremost authorities on professional wrestling. And at the time, Tom was doing Ring Wrestling Magazine.
Which I worked in the office at the time.
Right,
as well.
right. And I asked him, I said, I'd like to do a column. And at the time, in the back of Ring Magazine, they had all different little columns, such as Northeast Report, Pennsylvania Happenings, things along those lines. And I did a column called Matt Hearsay, which at the time I did for free, and enjoyed writing it, and have stayed with it ever since 1975. And I've seen a lot of changes in wrestling over the years, including with the magazines, but there's still a hardcore nucleus there, as long as Bill Apter continues to do a phenomenal job with his magazines. George Napolitano, in my opinion, is probably the best photographer that I've seen, along with the late Gene Gordon.
Right.
So there's still a few people around during the years, but over the past, I'd say since 1984, it's really made a change, and not only just what goes on in the ring, but outside as well.
Well, I noticed when the change first started happening back in '84, I guess that's when
Right.
Cyndi Lauper got involved, and Hulk Hogan won the WWF title for the first time. And more importantly, when Vince McMahon Sr. turned the business over to his son, that's when wrestling really started to change.
John, I think you hit it right on the head there. Probably the biggest change, and for a person as yourself, myself, some other listeners there that have been around wrestling for many years, the hardest thing to have been to accept with wrestling's change is it's become more of a two-company or two-horse race with the NWA. Really, only in name, they are owned by, as everybody knows, Ted Turner. The WWF is owned by Vince McMahon. Probably the most fun thing about wrestling, even up until the early 80s, was there was always circuits to follow, different circuits. There was always places for wrestlers to have employment. As you and I were chatting earlier, here on the East Coast, the excitement came every month when the WWF was doing their television tapings at the Philadelphia Arena and in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Or I should say Hamburg, right? And every month when they would do the tapings, they would bring in a new star. And it was always guesswork. Who was leaving the AWA? Who was leaving the NWA's offices, which was all over the United States? Who was coming in? And I think that excitement has been taken away somewhat in recent years, because if you look at the talent rosters with the WWF especially, the same people have been there for the past 5 or 6 years.
For quite a long period of time.
It's like having a deck of cards. You could keep shuffling them. You'll get something different once or twice, but sooner or later the same card is going to come up, and perhaps the game isn't as interesting. People are creative, but the talent, it's stale.
Great sense of history of Donnie getting started in the biz and talking about the business. And to this day, this guy is just like an encyclopedia.
Yeah. No, he's great. That's why I like that clip. I know it's a little longer than we usually try to go with, but like you said, I liked hearing the whole backstory. And I really like that he immediately gets to it. Like, he's letting you know, he's letting your listeners know that he is a resource. He is somebody to be trusted and who can analyze and really dig into it from a business type, you know?
Yeah.
That was great. Do you have any memories or stories about Pinky Larson? Because that's what Donnie said he got in.
The only thing I remember about him, he was like a jobber, enhancement guy, and it was not big in stature, a little shorter, and just wore these pink outfits, and it was just kind of a guy that was around, but you knew he wasn't going anywhere. So I guess they gave him a shot because he was he ran the ring crew at the time. Oh. But I never had any interaction with Pinky, no.
Oh, all right. Oh, yeah, some other weird pictures showed up when I saw it.
And my life has been better for it.
Yeah. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting. It's not a name that I have heard much, so.
You're not the only one.
Yeah. He got Donnie into the business.
What was your entree? Well, a guy named Pinky Larson used to let me watch them shows for free if I helped set up the ring as a 15-year-old lad.
Hey, it's something. It's something.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of 15-year-old lads that eventually became part of a ring crew in a couple of years that really didn't have it easy.
Yeah.
Which we'll get into down the road.
I don't know if I would blame Pinky for that, though.
I wouldn't put it on Pinky, no.
Yeah, no. Here's a short Donnie clip, too, because this is where you guys start...
Pinky Phillips.
Pinky Phillips. I only have a couple Donnie clips, but this one you guys start talking about like the fans and smart fans becoming more prevalent.
Yeah.
This is a real interesting shift in the industry on whole. Like you said, this is before insiders existed on this platform.
Yeah.
Here you have Luthez saying we need to bring back credibility. Here you have Donnie, the reporter, saying fans are just too smart to go that way, but we want to believe. It's just kind of interesting,
On the air, Don, you still there?
I'm here, John.
Beautiful. Before we took our commercial break, you started talking about some of the other things, as far as even some of the fans who have a I'm losing my... Can you just tell me what you were talking about, because I lost my train of thought here.
I was saying things...
I was looking at an ugly face here in the studio.
some of the things that have changed over the years in wrestling, besides magazines, fans, and whatnot. Years ago, and even before my time, in the 50s and the 60s, wrestling, it seems like every wrestler that was going had a fan club, or 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
And I remember you ran a very successful club for Freddie Blassie. In your bulletin, you used to put on the front cover a wallet-sized color photo, which now some other bulletins have copied and claimed to have been the original. But
I started that in 72.
I used to belong to so many. There was the United East Coast Wrestling Nuts fan club. There was the Wrestling Fans International Association when it was in its heyday. Now it seems. Back then, fans were more fans. They wanted to watch the matches. Now, they have what they call their sheets, their bulletins, where they want to be more than fans. They want to be on the inside. They want to know what's going on more than what's going on in the ring. They want to know what's going on in the dressing room.
Exactly.
Not that that's bad, but it shows wrestling fans today are a little bit more educated to wrestling than the doors weren't open so much a few years back. So it's changed a bit, but some good, some bad.
Yeah, Donnie was getting concerned about the insider publications, the sheets, and how it was kind of changing the dynamic of what a fan really was.
Yeah. Which I think is fascinating because, yeah, I hadn't thought about it this way until this episode about like, hey, we need to keep the credibility because that's the only way the business survives. And then you just look at everything in this moment, and it is a blurry decade of that, you know?
Mm-hmm. This is all the groundswell leading up to the internet, and then all hell broke loose.
Yeah. And then, but at the same time, it didn't quote destroy the business. It changed it in every way. And it did. Largely a business than it was.
Yeah.
But kind of fascinating to look at it in hindsight, you know?
Yeah, it's a fascinating business because how popular it is for something that's predetermined.
Yeah.
It's not an actual, competition. And yet people, it's treated as such, like it's a major sport.
Yeah.
And it is in a way, but it's just, it's all based on predetermined finishes.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's a fascinating time. So yeah, I like this, especially following up Lou Thez with this conversation with Donnie.
Yeah, it matched pretty well. It was a good back-to-back match.
Yeah. Just a fascinating shift. I have one more Donnie clip. It's he has a question for you about Hall of Fame concept.
Back with the Pro Wrestling Spotlight. We're back on the air with Don Rival. Don, how you doing?
Very good, John.
Like I was just mentioning to you, while we were taking a commercial break, you are an informative interview. You definitely have been around just as long as I have, and I got away from the business for a few years, and obviously you kept up, and you're just an exciting interview. I'm glad to have you on the program today.
Thank you, John. One last topic I'd like to touch on and ask you a question. Why do you think professional wrestling does not have a Hall of Fame? I live close by to the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. It's a site where memorabilia goes, where people can go. They could see statistics, they could see plaques, they could see pictures. Do you think it's because promoters traditionally have never cooperated why would they cooperate on something like this? Or do you think that maybe there's never been a serious push for a one building or a one site National Wrestling Hall of Fame?
Exactly. I think it's because of the promoters' reluctance to maybe get involved with anyone, because the promoters would obviously want their own boys in the Hall of Fame and not anyone else's. That could be a reason. I think it has to be done by a totally independent person who is not affiliated with any wrestling group to form such a hall. And I think that would be a great thing if a Hall of Fame could be a concept could be brought up and made, because there are wrestling fans who followed the sport for years and years, and there's others now just starting to get to know wrestling that would find something like this very interesting. Why don't you start something like that?
Well, give me Donald Trump's phone number. It's just that the way wrestling has emerged into the national prominence over the past couple of years, it seems that somebody would have thought about that, and I hope they do, because there are people such as Sam Munchnick, who is still with us. There's Lou Says. You have the Vern Gagnes. There are people around here that should be officially recognized for their contributions, because there are so many people today that don't know about these people because there's no one telling them about them. And I believe wholeheartedly that there should be an organization other than in California. They have the Cauliflower Alley organization, which is very good. They also honor boxers and movie people, but it's not solely wrestling. You have the Wrestling Fans International Association, which is not as powerful and as informative as it used to be. You have the United Wrestling Fans Organization out of Illinois, which is building up and it's coming on, but you don't have one solid promotional backing of a Hall of Fame, and I hope someday in the future that we're around to see it.
And there are several out there now that are in different parts of the country, but there's really not one unified, like a Cooperstown Hall of Fame for baseball or in Canton, Ohio with the NFL. There's still not one.
No, and even as much as the WWE wants to tout how about their Hall of Fame and do the big ceremony and have the rings, they've done nothing to like give us a place to visit.
Yeah, there's no brick and mortar place where fans can go that would be kind of a historic place like a Hall of Fame, which they really should do.
It'd be amazing. You could even do a traveling version, but whatever. I do think they should have something somewhere, But
yeah, they do those things at some of the premium live events like Royal Rumble or WrestleMania. They have that, they have that display set up with artifacts and items, but a brick and mortar place would be something that would be so popular.
Yeah, it would. And I think that we all thought once they started doing the Hidden Treasures episode that it was leading to we want these things so we can, because they kept saying they wanted it so fans could enjoy it and stuff. And I think we all thought, hey, here comes Hall of Fame, but no, it's like here's just some more stuff we can take on the road with us for those big events.
Swerve.
They got us again. But it's just cool. Yeah, like you said, there's been other little ones, and I just wish there was a larger entity. Because even you brought it up, these guys are going to want to put in their own people, know.
Imagine you had a brick and mortar Hall of Fame and you could see Lou Thesz's socks, for example.
Yeah, standing straight up on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Never washed. Well, the last clip I have is half your conversation with Sonny Blaze. You brought him on.
Okay.
And yeah, he sat there with you. But you had Donnie on for a long time.
I did.
It was a lot. So, very cool. Here's Sonny.
Let's go to Broadway.
Kind of an angry young man here in the studio. Broadway Sonny Blaze is here. I had the opportunity to work with Broadway last night in Brooklyn at St. Thomas Aquinas Gym. I'm still recovering from, I took a bad smash to the head, and Broadway's here, and he's a little upset. Why don't you go ahead and tell him what happened last night, Broadway?
Well, first of all, regarding the match with Kid Crush, if he would have paid more attention to me in the ring and less to attacking you outside the ring, maybe he would have won. I want to tell you, there was a battle royal for $5,000 and the title of King of Kings County.
A lot of money.
Okay? You signed the contract for me. It was an every man for himself battle royal. What it turned into was a handicap match. Excuse me. The Power Twins, Kid Crush, and Bialo the Giant against Broadway Sonny Blaze.
Yeah, everyone kind of double and triple teamed you. I noticed the Power Twins were smiling as they were dishing out the punishment to you. I guess that had to do with some of the comments that I had here on the program in the last few weeks.
Yeah, well, to tell you the truth, I was a little surprised because I thought that they might preoccupy themselves with Bialo. I can't believe he won that. Now, I want the commissioner to reverse this decision. I want the title. I want the money. I earned it. With 4-on-1. I'm glad that I held on to Crush. He came out right after me.
Right.
But this was absurd.
Well, I just noticed that there was a lot of double, triple team, quadruple teaming happening in the battle roll. But
why all me?
You got to understand, maybe they're trying to, maybe there was something going on before the match took place where maybe the Power Twins said, let's teach this guy a lesson. I didn't hear that per se, but maybe that's what did happen.
I signed an every man for himself. Every man for himself. If I would have known that we were allowed to team up, I would have brought somebody with me. Maybe Brian Donahue. He was available. Mm-hmm. I could have brought I went alone. I went in there. I thought we were all going to battle it out ourselves. It didn't turn out that way.
Right. Well, you know what they say, better luck next time. And, we just, you look better today, though.
Well,
but you did dish out a lot of punishment yourself yesterday to Crush.
Yeah.
I noticed. I gave him a couple of shots myself because I was just irritated in the way that he was behaving in the ring last.
Well, first of all, I want to know, was the referee his brother?
Could have been. I gave him a pair of took my glasses off. I said, this is what you need to call a match.
Without a doubt. First of all, he's designating which corner I stand in. Mm-hmm. I pick my corner, okay? Then he wants to check me. He didn't take the paint off his face, right? Mm-hmm. You kept seeing Crush kept wiping a little off, putting it in my eyes, right? Then he's
As a matter of fact, I tried to grab his face when I had him outside the ring, and it just slipped right off. It was kind of like a greasy substance.
He was oily. Mm-hmm. He was what a grease ball. But he kept attacking you. Why? Were you signed to wrestle the match?
No, I was not.
What did he get for wrestling you?
Hey,
he got a beating when he got back in the ring, right?
Exactly.
That's what's going to happen.
Well, as I told the listeners earlier, the Power Twins are not here today. They're wrestling in New Haven, Connecticut, and I would hate to see you guys in the same room together after what happened yesterday.
Well, after what they did, I was happy. If I didn't win the Battle Royal, at least they didn't. But I was surprised Bialo did.
Right.
I was very surprised. Okay, he's from Brooklyn. He holds it's sort of a traditional title. There's always been a King of Kings County. Mm-hmm. And it's always been declared annually in a Battle Royal, and it's been brought back. It's a good idea to have. I wanted that time. Brooklyn is my least favorite borough.
Right.
To me, it's the lowest of the boroughs, right behind the Bronx, Queens, and Staten Island. As a matter of fact, the only part of New York City that's worth anything is actually Broadway in Manhattan, and that's it.
Well, that's why you have your nickname, Broadway Sunny Blaze. Well, I guess what's going to happen, the next show in Brooklyn at St. Thomas Aquinas by the same promotion, there might be a grudge match in store, and I'm sure that you'll be talking to the promoters, and I'll be talking on your behalf as well.
I'm not wrestling there unless they clean up the locker room. What a pig pen.
Well, you better not. I wouldn't count my chickens before the hatch on that one. Let's take a call at 661-1440 and find out who's on the line.
What a bunch of malarkey. I mean, the annual crowning of the king. I mean, it was probably the only time they ever had anything like that, So, yeah, it was good. It was good imagination there. It was, kind of this alternate reality and universe that we had there for about 10 minutes on the show.
Yeah, I like the Taz didn't win because he was too focused on you, and Sonny was putting the boots.
And he was all greased up.
Yep.
Very entertaining.
My least favorite borough.
Yeah, he gave it his best shot. What are you going to do?
Yeah, that's awesome. But it was so cool. I also like that every time he comes on, he's like so ready. You know what I mean? Yeah. Okay, here's the thing. Here's how this went.
Yeah, so. He was just getting started, and he was just so happy to be on the air and getting a little notoriety, and shit, to this day that friendship exists, and what an amazing guy he is.
Yeah.
And we'll bring him back, and we'll bring Donnie on, and we'll bring some guests on. So good episode, not crazy, not really that crazy, a little bit more serious, good interviews, and whole show is on Patreon. We got some callers, so anyway, another one in the books there, my friend.
Yeah, it was really good, and we should have Stoney back on soon. He got the gift that we had sent him, and so
good.
Yeah, but outside of that, this one felt like this was really you stepping. This was a huge stride away from being kayfabe all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This was a big one where you're really talking about the business, how
until
it's changing.
Till the end.
Well, you got to put over Sonny.
Yeah. Had to go into that suspension of disbelief. But it was all disbelief.
But this was great. This was like a real insider feel one.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Very good. So as we mentioned in the beginning, this is going to be Patreon only and then on YouTube. And as we figure out and resolve the outstanding questions that we have right now. But we're back every week now. So patrons, you'll get it. Patreon.com/John Arezzi, $5 or $15 for all the archives. And what do you got going on, Marsh? Everything else good with you?
Yeah, I think we're doing pretty good. We got the baseball stuff going. The series is picking up. So, everything's going good.
Exciting rest of the month, baseball-wise, for sure.
Yeah.
And if you want to follow us on those other shows, it's the Terry Collins Show. It's 86th with Wally Backman, which is co-hosted by Bruce Jacobs. Yeah. Wally and Bruce. What a tandem. Great guest. Mookie Wilson, Gary Cohen, Howard Johnson. Eddie Lynch has been on. John Harper, famous baseball journalist. And he's going to get a lot of those 86 Mets. And Wally and Bruce Jacobs. I put them together. It was a strategic pairing. And it's working out. And Bruce is wild.
Yeah.
And Wally's wild.
So good.
And Terry's show is great. We're doing so great with that. And JP Ricciardi is just kind of this wonderful, the brushback with JP Ricciardi is a wonderful, intelligent conversation each week with various people who are high profile in the baseball business. And from Peter Gammons, the world famous journalist out of New England, to ball players, to ex-general managers, to agents. So we have some really cool shows. And then this one is the long-standing, long-running Pro Wrestling Spotlight. And we'll be back with another episode next week. So
absolutely.
All good.
Thanks for having me on this one.
All right, everybody.
Cool.
That's going to about wrap it up. Anything else? Any last comments from you, my friend? Or we're good to go here. Okay. And you could always follow Marsh on socials. And it's, I believe is what? Ref Marsh? Is that what it is, Marsh? There you go. And follow me at John Arezzi, Instagram, Threads, X. I'm out there everywhere. And of course, there are pages for this show. We have a YouTube channel. So don't forget to subscribe. And also for patrons, this is kind of going to be your exclusive for the time being. And we're happy to have each and every one of you there. I want to thank Anthony Pyrus and Joe Holloway as executive producers of Pro Wrestling Spotlight on Patreon, and for each and every one of you for helping support with the production cost of the show. And we need that more than ever before now. Until next time, when we talk more wrestling history with you, this is John Arezzi for Pro Wrestling Spotlight.
Well, fans, that's all the time we have this week. I'm John Arezzi. See you next time, everybody.